This week's parsha, one of the mitzvahs is the mitzvah of Shiluach Haken. Ki yekore kansipo lefonecho bederech. Shaleach teshalach esuem v'sabonim tikalecha. Lo sikach eim alabonim. So there's a big machlokes in Achronim regarding the definition of the mitzvah of Shiluach Haken. Does it require anybody, and under any circumstances, whenever and wherever you see a nesting bird, you need to send it away? Or does this mitzvah only apply to a situation in which you're really hungry and you want a scrambled egg or you want to eat some chicken and you have interest to take the birds or the eggs? It is only then that you can't take the mother together with its offspring, that you need to send the mother away. Shiur. Does anybody know who the Shiur was? Who was the Shiur? Anybody know? I think it's important when I give Shiurim, I just want to share with you who these giants were. Shiur lived 350 years ago. One of the greatest Achronim. His Bekiyas is amazing. The name of the Sefer, he was an orphan, and his grandmother, Chava, raised him, L'Talmid Torah. And in Ashkenazi Yiddish, Chava's Shiur, Shiur shel Chava. His name was Shiur. His grandmother's name was Chava. So just like you say, Moshe's Yankel, or Rivka's Pinchas, he was Chava's Shiur. And that's why he called the Sefer in honor of his grandmother, Chava's Shiur. Chava's Shiur says, like we have in the sheet, it's a mitzvah chiyuvis kamo tefillin. Not exactly like tefillin, because tefillin is every day. I would write, it's like a mitzvah chiyuvis, like a makkah. If you have a house with a roof, you need to build a makkah. If you happen to see this nest, send away the mother. Chasam Sofer is one of the great gedolim. That's the other shitta. And the Chasam Sofer maintains, it is only if you really want to take those eggs, or those little efroichim, that you need to send the mother away. If you don't need those efroichim or beitzim, the Chasam Sofer writes it's achzorius, it's cruelty. So these are the two different opinions. Chazon Ish Mereish Ayin Hai sides with the Chasam Sofer. So let's just have a short look at source number one. Shala nishalti im ki yikra kansipa lefnei ish besoda im mechuyev al kol ponim niskekol l'shaleach et uem or reshai lelechet ledako. Lo yamre Torah shaleach teshalach rak be'im yirtze lekechabonim. As a lengthy tshuva. His sikum, conclusion. Nachzor le'inyan ha-shala im mechuyev li'itopel nere de diktik nochanu. So, his source is the Gemara in Chulin Kuf Lametes. The Gemara says, we would have a havamina that a person needs to actively pursue and initiate and go take hikes in the forests and the mountains and look for a kansipor. Talmud Loimer, ki yakore. Ki yakore means if you happen to find. And there's no mitzvah lechaza b'horim. So the Chavas Shiur argues, if the mitzvah is only when you need eggs or a froichem, what havamina could there be that you have to go looking for a concept in the mountains? This proves, doesn't depend whether you want to take those eggs or not. It's a mitzvah whenever you happen to find a concept, and that way the havamina would be, you need to go looking for a concept. That is his conclusion. We have a lengthy tshuva of the Chasam Sofer, but there are many others in the Chazon Ish, and they say no. But they don't give a reasonable explanation in the Gemara. So what is this? Yochel Lechaza B'hori. The Chavas Shiur was an amazing bookie, and that's why I wonder a little bit. True, Shas Bavli, it is the only place we find Yochel B'chaza B'horim. But there are 4 additional mitzvahs in which we find in Chazal Yochel Yechaza B'horim. Tosefta Bava Metzia Perik Beis. and that is Perikil Metzias. Sefta says, Yochel Yechaza Borim to look for Avedis in order to be Makayim the Mitzvah. Tamed Loimer Kisira. It's only when you see. And the same regarding Prikavet Te'ina. What's more problematic is the Yerushalmi, Soita Daf Mem, regarding Egle Arufa. Yochel Bechaza Bahorim, Talmud Loimer Kisivga. Even more problematic, Sifri Parshas A regarding Ir Hanadachas. Yochel Yechaza, Talmud Loimer Kisishma. Ki Yekorei, Ki Yemotzei, Ki Sishma, Ki Sivga are all the same. Now, what's the Havamina that a person Yochel Yechaza Borim for Egle Aruf? Would there be a real Havamina that you have a chiyuv? Look for people that were murdered in the mountains. Why would we assume that Chas Shalom, somebody was murdered? Doesn't make sense. We have a chiyuv. Go to the forest, go to the mountains, look for dead people. The only time we need to look for a dead person is if there's an aguna. You know, person is lost. We don't know his whereabouts. And his wife is an aguna, so do everything you can to find him. But out of the blue, why would we think somebody was murdered somewhere? It doesn't make sense. And what is even more problematic is Ir Hanadachas. So Ir Hanadachas is not a little wallet that you find or a nest of a bird. So where exactly do we look for an Ir Hanadachas? In the forest. Is there a city there? Or in the mountains? So how do we understand this entire concept? And even according to the Chavasior, that there's a chiyuv whenever you see a concept, but it still doesn't make sense that you need to look for them in the mountains, because the question would be, so how much time do I need to spend roaming the plains and the mountains and the forests to look for a dead man or for a kansipur? How much? Chazon Ish writes, maybe once in a lifetime. But there is no such a thing, a mitzvah once in a lifetime, in the entire list of Taryag. Ein davar kazeh. There are different definitions of mitzvahs. Some are mitzvahs atoli b'zman, zman groma, Shabbos, Yom Tov, day, night, but there's no such a thing in the entire Torah mitzvah that you need to perform once in your life. Ksiva Sefer Torah, the mitzvah is to have a Sefer Torah, not the etzem ksiva. And therefore, if you wrote a Sefer Torah and you gave it away or you sold it, you immediately have a mitzvah to write another one. So it's, but a mitzvah, which is not about the result, no such a thing once in a lifetime. Ksiva Sefer Torah you could have 100 times in your lifetime if you sold or gave away a Sefer Torah. And that is why the minig is, when a person writes Sefer Torah and he gives it to a shul, it's not an acquisition, it's not a matana. He is the balam, but he lets the shul use his Sefer Torah. So Lanias Daiti, even according to the Chavasior, there is no havamina that a person is mechuyev to look for a kansipper. And there definitely could be no chiyuv looking for murdered people. Kal v'choyim bemben oshel kal v'choyim, there could be no chiyuv looking for an Ir Hanadachas. Ir Hanadachas is a mitzvah la bezdin. Egle Aruf is a mitzvah la bezdin. What does that have to do with the individual? I think what Chazal come to teach us is the nature of a mitzvah. There's not even a midas chasidus. Because the Torah clearly describes and defines the situation, the circumstances. Ki yekorei, ki yemotza, ki sishma. So a person is anxious to perform as many mitzvahs as he can. And the Torah says, if you have an extra half hour, don't go looking for the dead or for the living birds. Say another few kapitlach in Tehillim, learn another daf gemara. It's not even a midas chasidus, because the very nature of these mitzvahs is coincidence. Ki yekorei, ki yemotzei, ki sira. And therefore this sugya doesn't prove anything. What's the Chassam Sofer's argument? Primarily he brings desire. What is this mitzvah all about? The Rambam in Moira Nevuchim, Chelek Gimel Perek Mem Ches, the Rambam was First and foremost amongst Dorshei Tamei HaMitzvahs. And Chelek Gimel and Moed Nevuchim, from beginning to end, is Tamei HaMitzvot. The Rashba comes out against the Rambam, and the Rashba says there's no importance at all in trying to explain mitzvahs. The Rashba quotes the Medrash, Ma ichpas lo lakodesh baruch hu ben shoichet min hatzava leshoichet min ha'orev. What difference does it make to HaKadosh Baruch Hu where you shecht an animal from the front or from the back? Lo nitnu ha-mitzvahs elo letzarav behemes habriyos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us mitzvahs for us to express our servitude, our betochen, and our will just to be mekayim mitzvahs. But there is no intrinsic, real difference between shoichet from the back or the front. The Rambam is aware of the Medrash. But the Rambam says, Ein halachic medrash is it. Just like in the realm of halacha, there are many machlokes. Sometimes the halacha is kerova, Rabbi Yochanan, and Chameshes Chachmei HaMishnah, Rabbi Seinu Shebedoram. There are very clear guidelines. Halachic Rabbi Yehuda keneged Rameya, Rabbi Shimon neged Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi against all the others. Same applies to Agoda. There is such a medrash, but that's not halachic ruling. Eina medrash ikar. That's the Rambam. So the Rambam says, Ken Sipra is all about Rachmanis. Rachmav al kol ma'asav. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to emulate his ways. Mahu rachum, afatu rachum. And Shiluach Haken is a manifestation of racham. The Ramban writes the same, ala Torah. But the Zohar has a totally different approach. Tikkunei HaZohar. Does anybody know what Tikkunei HaZohar is? It's a fascinating story. Did you ever hear about a Sefer Tikkunei HaZohar? Everybody remembers the Shiur that we sing on Lag BaOmer. Oso Shivim Tikkunim. Tikkunei HaZohar is a big Sefer. 70 different interpretations of the first word in Teres Moshe, Bereshis. One word, a big sefer, 70 different interpretations al pi halacha, and the first word in Teres Moshe, Bereshis. It's amazing. Just to come to think, if Reb Shimon would write tikkunim on every word in the Torah, this Beis Medrash wouldn't have enough space to have just tikkunim. Tikkun Vav. The Zohar says that the mitzvah of Shiluach Haken is to be Metzayer, the mother, and to invoke her rachamim, to have her long for her children, Evrochim or Beitzim. And then Rachmei Shemayim are Mesoirer and Klal Yisrael. Tzar Ashchino and Ga'aguim, Kodesh Baruch Hu, for his children that are in Golos. According to this understanding, writes the Chassam Sofer, definitely the mitzvah would apply whenever you see a Tzipor, because it's not a manifestation of Rachamim. The Chassam Sofer says, but that's Kabbalah, and the shit of the Chassam Sofer, many sources, is we don't paskin in accordance to Kabbalah, in accordance to Pashtus. And in Pashtus, it is a manifestation of Rachamim. If you want to take those eggs, or those little chicklets, whatever they're called, those baby birds, then if you take them together with the mother, that is more painful to the mother, and therefore send her away. But if you don't need those eggs or those birds, it's Achzorius, writes Chassam Sofer. But according to the Zohar, that is the objective, that is the inyan. And then the Chassam Sofer says, B'chlal I have a kasha on the Zohar. Because Hatinach bezman chorb mabayis. Shchinta begelusa. Klal Yisrael is in Galus. But this mitzvah applies every time and everywhere. So how would we understand the mitzvah? Kasher Kodesh Baruch Hu shoichin b'tzion and the Beis HaMikdash oimed al tiloi. Therefore, the Chassam Sofer writes, I don't think that the Zohar is the real thing. And he paskins, the mitzvah doesn't apply only if you want to take those birds. It's quite clear that the Chassam Sofer didn't see the Zohar. He was only aware of the Zohar by the quote in the Chavas Shiur. Because the Kasha of the Chasam Sofer, in that very same paragraph, Tikkun Vov Rebbe Elazar ben Reb Shimon asked his father. It's not new. When Reb Shimon said this drasha, that the reasoning of Shiluach Haken is to be Ma'oyer Tzar HaShechina, Rebbe Elazar asked him, so what about Bisman Shabeis HaMikdash Kaim? And he gave a very clear answer. And Reb Shimon said, Bisman Shabeis HaMikdash Kaim, it is to be Ma'oyer Tzar HaShechina Racha Mishamayim ala Neshomes HaToyos. There are so many Neshomes out there, Shaloi Motzu Lehem Menucha V'Nachala. They're neither in Gehenna, neither in Gan Eden. And we born to be Ma'oyer Racha Mishamayim. And those Neshomes, bring them home. Bring them home. Either Gehenna or Gan Eden, but start the process, the cleansing and rinsing process. So this very same question was asked by Rebbe Elazar ben Reb Shimon, and that is what Reb Shimon explained. So obviously, the Chasam Sofer didn't see the Zohar. But nevertheless, those are the two opinions, and they depend on the two reasonings of Mitzvah of Shiluach Haken. So the very last two lines are exactly what I just quoted. The question of Elazar, and Kam Rebbe Elazar v'Amar, v'u kodem de goli yisur v'shechinte b'mayim mekayim in Shiluach Haken. So before the Golos, and before Golos HaShechina, what about Shiluach Haken? Omer Reb Shimon, Bri, my son, begin le'isar rachamim an inin nafshin v'ruchin v'nishmosin da'va'azlin begalusa begilgula. So the question was asked, and it was answered. So two different approaches what Shiluach Haken is about, and two different shittas l'halacha. So let's have a look at the Chasam Sofer. The question the Chasam Sofer deals with, Al dvar mi shepoga beken ve'em yoseves al abonon b'yom Shabbos Kodesh. Im mechuyev b'shiluach, afal gav de metaltel muktzeh. So he brings the Shiur, disagrees with the Shiur, he brings his raya, and he writes an amazing svara. You got to be a Chasam Sofer to write something like this. So the Chasam Sofer says, the last two paragraphs, I think this mitzvah doesn't apply on Shabbos, especially according to the Zohar, that the goal is to be Ma'oyer Tzar HaShechina. But Shabbos is supposed to be a Yom Simcha in all the Olamis, not only for us, for the Malachim, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Simcha of Shabbos is all-encompassing. So you can't be Ma'oyer Tzar b'Shemayim on Shabbos. So the mitzvah doesn't apply on Shabbos. I'm amazed. First of all, Kedushin Lamed Daled, we learn that Shiluach Haken is a mitzvah she'ein zman grama, and therefore Noshim Chayoris. According to the Chasam Sofer, in its very essence, at least according to the Zohar, the mitzvah doesn't apply on Shabbos. But, what? That's a very good question. Binyan Makkah is definitely considered ein zman grama. So maybe the difference would be, Machna Ephraim, Shluchin Yud Aleph, he says, Makkah, you don't need to do it yourself, just as good as a goy does it, because it's only about the result. I think by Shiluach Haken Shlichus would apply, but you would need a Shaliach, and that would be a problem, at least having a Shaliach do something on Shabbos. But that's a good question. But I'm more amazed because Ibediditalia, you know, human beings can't understand the Rochav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And my feeling would be HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very, very happy when we are Ma'orer Rachamav al Bnei Yisrael. So by human feelings, you know, and the emotional makeup of human beings is that Tzar and Simcha can't go together. Either you're happy or you're sad. By HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I don't think there's any contradiction. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us this mitzvah to be Ma'orer Rachamav. So if he would be so disturbed about being sad about the Golos, why would he want us to be Mitzayah the Shechina and to be Moirech HaMishamayim? So I would think that's a Kodesh Baruch Hu's Simcha. When we are Mekayim Shiluach Haken, V'rachem Shamayim is Gavrim, and it brings closer the Geula, that makes the Kodesh Baruch Hu very happy. Yes, Tzara Shechina, but I think that would be a very happy event in Shamayim when a person is Mekayim Shiluach Haken. Both approaches have a source in Medrash Shabbat, this week's Parsha. On one hand, the Medrash says, Kishem shekodesh Baruch Hu meracham ala behemois, kacha kodesh Baruch Hu meracham ala oifes. Umenayin, ki akore kan sipor lefonecho. So on one hand, the Medrash supports the Moreh Nevuchim, the Ramban, and a few lines later, the Medrash says that when a person is Mekayim Shiluach Haken, he hastens Boya Moshiach, and he brings Eliyahu Hanavi, and that is according to the Zohar. He's Moireh Racham Mishamayim al Bnei Yisrael Shebegolos, and that brings the Geula closer. So the Chassam Sofer is a big chiddush. So it's my feeling against the Chassam Sofer's feeling. Chassam Sofer had a bigger heart than I do, and Batlu Dati. So on one hand, we have the Chassam Sofer, and he says, if you don't want those birds or those eggs, it's cruelty. Don't do it. On the other hand, we have the Zohar. And the Mekabolim have somewhat of a compromise, and that's very important to know. Birkei Yosef Yoredei Samak Tzadik Beis writes, Al Pi Ari, a person should be mishtadel to be Mekayim Shiluach Haken. So what does it mean he should be mishtadel? If he wants to take those birds, it's a chiyuv gomer. If he doesn't want to take them, according to the Chassam Sofer, it's an aveira. So the Birkei Yosef and the Ari, that's al pi Kabbalah. Pischei Tshuva, Reish Tzadik Beis Harav Yoredei quotes the Mishnas Chachomim. I wouldn't expect anybody to know who was the Mishnas Chachomim. I would be greatly surprised if anybody does know. Mishnas Chachomim. Rabbi Immanuel Chai Riki was one of the great Mekabolim, Talmid of Shel Ha'ari. And he writes, if you're not Mekayim the Mitzvah Shiluach Haken be'idne deritcha, you might be punished. I think more than once I spoke in the yeshiva about the concept of idne deritcha. It is found once in Shas, Menochas Memalef. If you don't wear tzitzis in a moment of wrath, you will be punished. If you don't eat matzah b'leil seder, if you're not Mekayim lulav, if you don't say Kriya Shema Shachris v'Arvis, you're going to be punished in any event, not only be'idna deritcha. Person that is mevatel a chiyuv of mitzvah say, that's an aveira. You're mevatel an esen an aveira, you violate a lav as an aveira, that's not idna deritcha. Idna deritcha is, I'm not mevatel a mitzvah, but I'm expected to do everything I can to put myself into a chiyuv. So if you have dalat kanfis without tzitzis, you're going to be punished anytime. That's not idne deritcha. Idne deritcha is, I'm not wearing dalat kanfis, so I'm not mechuyev in tzitzis. But we expect you to wear dalat kanfis in order to be mekayim tzitzis. So what does the Mishnas Chachomim mean when he says, be'idne deritcha, you might be punished? So this is a compromise. This is shitten number 3. You don't have a chiyuv of Shiluach Haken unless you want those birds or eggs. But you're mekayim a mitzvah even if you don't want the birds and eggs. The chiyuv is only if you really intend to use those eggs or little birds. But if it wouldn't be a mitzvah at all, then there would be no oynish b'idne deritcha. I'm not even mekayim a mitzvah. So why does a person need to be mishtadel if it's not a mitzvah? So to me it is clear, the Mishnas Chachomim are a third shitta. Compromise. You don't have a chiyuv unless you really want those birds, but you still have a mitzvah even though you have no intention of using those birds. And that is because the time of the Zohar. So the great Mekabbalah maintained, Ikar ha'halacha kerambam, keramban, it's about Rachmanis. But there still is an inyan to be Mekayim the Zohar. Not like there's some Sefer that says it's Achzorius. So what's my psak? Every now and then people come with simcha and say, wow, I find a nest on my windowsill. Will the Rav want to be Mekayim the mitzvah? And I always, give an amasla, give terutzim. I can't. I have a shiur because I don't really think, I think we're choshesh to the Chsam Sefer. But on the other hand, I say, if you're walking in the woods, you're hiking, and you see a concept, just leave it alone. And don't get into it. But if you have it on your windowsill and you want to get rid of it anyway, because it's a nuisance. Every time you open the window, the birds might fly in and they spread filth and sometimes, bacteria. Then try to be Mekayim the Mitzvah of Shiluach Haken. You want to get rid of it anyway, so don't just wait till the mother is not nesting. Try to be Mekayim the Mitzvah of Shiluach Haken. So, no. B'chlal, it's a question whether you say a bracha on Shiluach Haken because there are so many sveikis involved. According to the Rambam, you need to actually catch the bird and send it away, and that is very uncommon because the bird flies away when you just will approach the nest. So our minig is not to say a bracha on the mitzvah of Shiluach Haken. So we spoke about a very interesting and a very important mitzvah, and that is Shiluach Haken. And according to the Zohar, it is all to be ma'orer rechamei shemayim. And we're in Chodesh Elul. So I don't suggest you all leave the yeshiva and go Yachasa b'horam v'gvois to look for a Ken Sipra, but the Gemara says it's not the way. Ki yakorei. So we are in Chodesh Elul. And I want to share with you some thoughts and feelings about the essence of Chodesh Elul. There are very, very many remozim on Elul. The Balatura brings, Omar Hashem Elokecha, Eis levavcha ve'eis levav, Alaf Lamed Vav Lamed, Eis levavcha ve'eis levav. Echod la'oila ve'echod lachatos. But the most well-known remez, which is also brought in the Mishnah Brura, is Ani ledoidi ve'doidi li. And somebody might have the stupid mistake of thinking, how do they get all these ramozim? Somebody was just bored. So he went to the book Haken and he took out a Tanakh Koren and he started reading from Bereshis Bara till the end of Ksuvim, and whenever he found 4 words in the sequence of Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, underline it, and we have a whole bunch of Ramozim about Elul. But these Ramozim all appear in Shara Kavonis of the Ari. Some of them Balaturim and other Rishonim. So each of these Ramozim conveys a message that is relevant to Chodesh Elul. I don't have time now to go through all of them, but let's talk about Ani ledoidi ve'doidi li. Rabbeinu Yonah Sha'ar Tshuva writes, when Elul comes, we are all beyiro v'fachad me'emas yoyim hadin. These are frightening times, which we're really worried. And that's why we do our best to do tshuva. Ashkenazim blow the shofar every morning in Chodesh Elul. And the shofar, by its very essence, is about Uru Yeshena Mishinascham, like the Rambam writes in the Hilchos Tshuva. The Navi says, Im yetoka shofar be'ir v'am lo yechrodu. But where does this posuk appear? Ani ledoidi v'doidi li. Not in Megillas Eicha, not in Sefer Iyov, not even in Pirkei HaToichocha of the Nevi'im Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu. You should know where this posuk is written, Ani ledoidi v'doidi li. It's in Shir HaShirim. Shir HaShirim is not the most frightening sefer that we have. It's not about Midas Adin. Shir HaShirim is a love story. And the Rambam writes in Perek Yud Mehilchas Shuvah, it's a moshel. It's a moshel about the love between Ovinu Shebeshamayim, and his beloved children. The Doid in Shir Hashirim represents the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and we are the Raya. And the Doid and the Raya are desperately looking for each other, and they seem to have difficulty to connect. That's our story, the story of us and the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So Shir Hashirim is the ultimate sefer of Ahava, of Rachamim, of Gaguim. And that is where we find Chodesh Elul, and this is an important message. Elul is not about Midas Adin. Kodesh Baruch Hu pleased with us because he so much loves us. Take advantage of Elul. Do tshuva terem yagiu yemei adin. It'll be far more problematic and difficult than a seres yemei tshuva. Seres yemei tshuva, Kodesh Baruch Hu yoshev al kisei adin, hashoifet kol haaretz. Yes, we have the means of turning din into rachamim, primarily the shofar. But the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, why wait? Now I'm sitting on kisei rachamim. Seres yemei tshuva, you will need to make me get off Kisei Adin and get on to Kisei Rachamim. So Kodesh Baruch Hu says, take advantage. Elul is a Chodesh of Rachamim. Elul is Shir Hashirim. Elul is Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li. Elul is a gift that a Kodesh Baruch Hu gives us. And he pleased with us. Take advantage of Chodesh Elul. Right now I'm sitting L'Chatchila on Kisei Rachamim, not on Kisei Adin. And that is the importance of the message of Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li. However, Elul is also demanding. This posuk appears in two different versions in Shir Hashirim. Perek Beis the Roshan is Doidi Li va'ani lo haro'a b'shoshani. It is only towards the end of Shir Hashirim and Perek Vav that we find version number 2. Ani ledoidi v'doidi li haro'a b'shoshani. What's the difference between doidi li v'ani lo? Number 1, ani ledoidi v'doidi li. Number 2, Eichu Rabosi, the Medrash says that there is an eternal machlokes or disagreement between us and the Kodesh Baruch Hu. 3 times a day we plead with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hashivenu Hashem elecho v'nushuva. Bring us home, and then we'll do tshuva. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, Shuvu elai va'ashuva eleichem. You need to make the first step, not me. If I would have my way, we wouldn't have Chodesh Elul. I would prefer Chodesh Dalul. It's the first version of Shir Hashirim. Doidi li v'ani lo is our bakosha. Hashivenu Hashem elecha, and only then v'neshuva. First doidi li v'ani lo. I looked everywhere, and I didn't find anyone that has a gersa Chodesh Dalul. Nowhere. So obviously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no, I'm not going to change my mind. This is the way it's got to be. Shuvu elai v'ashuv eleichem. There's a Hasidic story, and I love Hasidic stories. The Rav Shitzer Rav, does anybody know who the Rav Shitzer Rav was? What was his name? The Rav Shitzer Rav. The Divrei Chaim was a Talmud, a Chassid of the Rav Shitzer Rav. Nobody knows. No Rav Shitzer Eineklich here? What? Surname? Huh? Oh, that's a family name, but he had a middle name. Reb Naftali Tzvi. So he was once sitting in a wagon, riding in the middle of a Polish harsh winter, and one of the wheels sunk into the mud. It was raining, it was cold, the balagala goes out and pushes and puffs and pushes and puffs, to no avail. He walks to the Rebbe's window, delicately knocks on the window. The Rebbe opens the window. Probably it wasn't like this. And he says to the Rebbe, Ich weiß, dass passt nicht. I know it's totally inappropriate, but if we really want to get home, I'm doing my best. It's not budging. Toivim hashnayim and a wechad. So maybe we should try to push together. I wasn't there But I guess ve'yifin koi v'choi v'yarki einish. So the Rebbe goes out and they push together. Still doesn't move. So the Heilige Tzaddik lifts his eyes to the heavens and he says, Rabbeinu Shalom, I firmly believe in Hashgacha Pratis. And I know that you stuck me in the mud, I should do tshuva. But it's a bit hard to do tshuva when you're wet and freezing and you're up to the knees in the mud. So please, get me out of here, bring me home. You know, I'll change, I'll shower, I'll have a hot cup of tea, and I promise to do tshuva. Obviously it worked because I believe he got home. And I don't think he was stuck in the mud till summer arrived. But when the Hasidim heard the story, it was clear to them that when he pleaded with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, it wasn't about his personal difficulty being in the mud on that very day, but he was lifting his eyes to the heavens and said, Rabbeinu Shalom, I know you stuck us in the mud, we should do tshuva. But for 2,000 years, that hasn't worked. And we're still stuck in the mud for 1,800 years. So I promise, bring us home, send Mashiach, build a base of Mikdash, and I promise we'll do tshuva. But since the Rav Shitzarov got stuck in the mud, another 200 years transpired. And we're still there. So obviously, it's Elul, not Dalul. Shuvu Elai, wa shuvu Aleichem. So we need to take advantage of Elul and come back to a Kodesh Baruch. But Kodesh Baruch is a Rachum V'chanan, and he's not asking for so much. Pischuli Pesach kechudosh shel machat. And what do Chazal say? Pischuli Pesach kechudosh shel machat, va'ani. Huh? I don't know the reason why you're quiet. Maybe you remember what I said a year ago. So the whole world says, Pischuli Pesach HaChudesh HaMachad v'aniyeftach lam Pesach kepischoi shel ulam. But that's nowhere to be found. It's not a Mama Chazal. It is in Tashlech, in very many Sforim. But what Chazal say is more heartwarming. It's a Medrash in Shir HaShirim. Pischuli Pesach HaChudesh shel Machad v'aniyeftach lachem ptachim. Not one gate, but many. Ani eftach lechem psochim shiu agoris ukroinois ovrim behem. And whenever I quote the Medrash, I say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't deal with empty wagons. No. Those agoris v'kroinos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises, if we open a Pesach kechudesh shel machat, are overfilled with bona, chaya, Mezoyne Ravicha, Barias Gufa, Nahora Ma'alya, Panosa Bekova, Nachas from your children. All he's asking for, make the first step. Shuvu Elai. At least open a Pesach kechudosh shel machat. V'ani eftach lechem psochim. Not one, but many. V'agoles v'koines ovrim behem. Just make that first step. Elul. Ani ledoidi and then doidili. So we need to take advantage of this month. And take advantage means, first and foremost, cheshbon and nefesh, and try to be better. Nobody knows a person as well as he can know himself. And everybody knows, where do I need to try to be better? More Torah. Another few prokem of Tehillim every day. Chesed. But we need to take advantage and try to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting for us. Like the Doid in Shir HaShirim. So this is an amazing month. It's a month Shekuloi Rachamim. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plea is, take advantage. Don't wait till I'm sitting al Kisei HaMishpat. Don't wait for Yemei Adin. Start right now. And that is what Elul is all about. So we should all have a great Zman. And in this very special month, learn better, learn more, daven more, and everybody should try to be better than he was a day before. Kodesh Baruch Hu, Yazor, we should all open that little door, that Pesach kechudesh shel machat, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should open many great shiurim. And we should be zeicher to be nana from those agolos ekroinos. Good Shabbos.